looks like we're streaming as well. So welcome everyone to the Deloitte RAB technical Q&A. This is the second of our Q&As, which we're doing. Hope everyone is finding their training progressing, feeling a bit fitter and stronger as they get through the weeks and months. And it's always a lot nicer this time of year when it gets a bit lighter at the beginning and at the end of the day as well. So this Q&A, last time we were talking more about the general topics about the ride, and this technical one gives us a chance to dig into some more specifics and technical details about everything from nutrition to preparation to mechanical questions and things like that. All of this is about us trying to get you guys as best prepared as possible, because we know from experience, the better prepared you are, the better chance of you finishing, lifting your bike up over your head at John O'Groats, and enjoying as many of those miles along the way as we can. So on the call today, we'll have a couple of familiar faces, a couple of new faces. So we've got Andy, the route director, and Karen, who looks after all the base camps. But we've also got Rich, our mechanical lead. We are meant to have John, our chief paramedic, but as he is working on the front line of the NHS, he may have been called in to deal with something at the moment, but we can cover off his stuff if he doesn't join shortly. We've also got Mac, who's the co-founder of Threshold and also the Deloitte Ride Across Britain. And he's going to be giving his perspective as a past rider, particularly around kind of kit and the lessons he's learned. So before we go into the detail, something just to point out about this more technical webinar. We will go into some specifics and some more technical detail. And depending on how comfortable you are with those areas, that can just be a little bit worrying if you don't know some of the language being used. But it's really important to realize that RAB is a personal journey for people, and everyone's experience of it is slightly different. So when you arrive down in Land's End, you'll see a real range of people on different bikes, different shapes, different ages, different experiences. And it is a very, very personal journey, and that includes all the preparation. So the majority of what we'll go through today is guidance, and that's kind of distilled down from overseeing about 7 million miles or so of riding on RAB, but they're not all rules that you have to strictly adhere to. Some stuff is pretty universal in terms of time spent on your bike is always massively helpful, in particular using the kit you're going to use on the live event. But then beyond that, it becomes quite personal. For some people will have a very protein-based, kind of highly technical sports nutrition-based diet and all their preparation on the live event. Some people will have a more kind of pastry, pork pie type diet in their preparation on the live event as well. Both of those can get you to the finish line, and it's about getting the right balance and getting used to whatever you're going to use. Again, examples like some of the kit and equipment can get expensive. So the advice we give of, getting the best quality shorts you can afford, I think is really good advice. However, you can scroll through hundreds of pairs and see ones at a couple of £100 plus. The reality is the most comfortable shorts I had when I rode Deloitte RAB a few years ago, I bought in Istanbul for about £30 and are still going strong today, albeit my wife has pointed out they should only be used for indoor training now because they are getting a little bit translucent. But again, it's about finding stuff which you get used to. And again, we get into gear ratios. All of that advice is great to help the majority of people spin their legs up the climbs and not wear themselves out. But we've had guys do it on single speeds and things like that and make it to the finish smiling. So don't worry if some of these things don't necessarily feel like they really apply to you. It's about taking the broad guidance, picking the things which help you improve, and then getting comfortable and practicing with that. So before I hand over to Andy, just a quick note on COVID, because obviously this is remains a big focus for you guys and for us as well. So as we said before, the guidelines are still evolving. We're following it super closely. So we've got links in, via the NHS, good example from our paramedics actually working on the front line at the moment. So we get, the minute stuff comes through to the NHS, we get that directly to us. We're also working as a group of mass participation sports organisers with organisations like the London Marathon, with a direct line into DCMS and the governing bodies. So as soon as legislation comes out, we will take that, we will process that and adapt our policies accordingly. But as it stands, we are confident that we're going to be able to deliver a safe event with a really high quality experience come September. One of the things which has been asked by a few of you guys is around the international question, international riders coming in. So you may have seen there's kind of developing headlines around vaccine passports, or what being called these green certificates. This is a kind of an EU-wide and international discussion around the legality and the technicalities of that at the moment. So we don't know exactly what that's going to look like, because I don't think anyone does at the moment. So our advice would be, in the first instance, if you're an international rider, is look at your broad country's travel guidance to the UK, because that will be the basis of what we implement on the ride. But we think there's going to be lots of ways we can ensure that if someone can get to the UK safely, and we can test them at the beginning of the ride, we're confident we can then look after them on the event. So, like I said, I'd love to say a definitive, it's going to be this, 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 and this. But at the moment, as with everything, there's elements of uncertainty. So we will just communicate with you as soon as we know more. And again, thanks in advance for bearing with us. Like I said, we like to get stuff as clear as possible, but this is something which is outside of everyone's control. So we're doing what we can. Okay, so that's a quick intro from me, but I will now hand over to Andy.
Thanks very much, Tups. Good morning, everybody. Ordinarily, of course, today we'd be somewhere around Prince's Risborough. We'd probably be having a cup of coffee, having had a nice pastry, and we'd be thinking about going out on the road to share some of the wisdom that you might have had imparted over that coffee. The training rides in that format came about when we were at Mickleham in Surrey, and we had a snowy ride, and Mac and I decided, after watching a car slide off the road, that it was probably more sensible not to go out on the bikes that morning and sit and have a chat about all things RAB. And everyone got so much out of it that this sort of format, we think, is probably a good way to go. So hopefully you'll all pick up a lot of information this morning, valuable stuff. No question's a stupid question. I think Tups has probably already said that. And really what we're keen to do, just to reiterate some of the points that Tups has made, is to make sure that you get to the start line in the best shape that you possibly can. And time spent on the bike is the most crucial aspect. We appreciate that people have got busy lives, work, children to look after, other commitments. So it's really important that you make the most of any moment you have to get out on the bikes. So training itself, some of you will know this. I think the other point that Tups made, and it's really important to bear in mind, is that there's some people on this ride that are ride regularly. This is a bucket list challenge, which it is for everybody, but actually it's sort of something that they can do 100 miles quite simply. Other people have never done 100 miles in their lives. Although, having said that, it would be great if you all have at least ridden 100-mile ride before you get there. We did have one very famous year where a rider was trailing off the back already before the first feed station at 35 miles. So we just quietly went up and asked him if he was all right and what was the sort of longest ride he'd done, and he said that was it. Funnily enough, he didn't actually make it any much further than that ride, but it's a true story. So it does show the value of making sure you are 100% prepared. Training itself, people often wonder, what training is, and it's not about going out and smashing yourself to bits. It's about having a plan. It's about making sure that you ride within yourself. An event of this nature is an endurance ride. It's not sprint training on a velodrome. So it's important that you ride an intensity during your training that's comfortably hard and not hardly comfortable. Now that sounds like a very easy throwaway phrase, but it's where you should be able to ride an intensity level where you can just have a chat to the rider you might be riding with. You feel that you're pushing on a wee bit, but you're not actually killing yourself. So it's an important understanding of what that is. Some of you will no doubt ride to power, and some of you will ride to heart rate, and some of you will know what those parameters are that come into that sort of description that I just described. The other point about training, of course, is that what you're actually doing is you stretch your body, you ride hard, or increase volume or intensity, and then you'll have a period where you then ease off. And the general rule of thumb is that you'll build up. Let's just say, for example, your first week was a 100-mile week. Your second week might be 120 miles in terms of volume, and then you might go up to 140 miles. And then for the week 4, you might come back to 100 miles to let the adaptation take place. And that's generally the basic principles of what training is doing. You're overstressing your body, and then you're allowing it to recover because it thinks it's going to do that again, and then it's stronger when you come back to start training. You can easily build that into a monthly cycle, and of course you can build that into a weekly cycle. So you can have 3 days of progressive build up, and then you can have a recovery day. Ride as much as you can is one of the things I've said. People get a bit excited about hills, and of course a lot of people do worry about the hills on this ride, and it's fair to say that the first 2 days are pretty significant. The climbs in Cornwall and Devon are short, sharp climbs, generally steeper than the ones that you'll experience in Scotland. So there's 2 different ways to ride those, whether you're going to sort of punch up them out of the saddle, or whether you're going to get into a nice steady gear and sit in the saddle and pedal at a gentle rate. But once again, practicing on hills is more about your mind knowing you can do it. The reason I say that is because some of the best mountain climbers in the Tour de France in the 80s all came from Holland, which is not renowned for having too many big hills. So it's about the intensity that you're training at. I think it's important to make that point, but also, of course, training on hills, one of the things that we've often found is that some riders that are perhaps less practiced also need to know how to descend. It's often we find that people are pretty slow going up hills, and then they're fairly slow going down hills. Of course, everything has to be done with safety, but it's important that you think that one through as well. So that's pretty much the sort of the principles of training. Practicing on hills, more for the mindset, and similarly the longer distances. You don't have to go out and bash out massive 100-mile rides every single day. What you do need to do is better to ride shorter but more frequently in a week than it is to not go out and then just try and do it all at the weekend. So if you can try and get that into your heads, that will make a big difference. Okay, next slide, please. So nutrition, we're very lucky on this event to have High Five as a nutrition partner. The key message really is to practice with whatever brand that you're going to use on the event in the lead up to it. So if you don't get on with High Five, for example, it's worth trying it out before you get there. If you don't get on with it, then make sure that you've got some form of alternative that you need to bring if that's your bag. But as Tups has very rightly pointed out, the feed station food is pretty outstanding. High Five, I'm old enough to have ridden before any of this special sports nutrition was available, and riding on bread and water, as the French used to say, is quite adequate to get you through if you think about your diet. One of the things I witnessed a few years ago on RAB was a rider who was obviously going through a bad patch. He went up to the feed station, grabbed something like 6 or 7 gels, opened them all and poured them all into his water bottle, thinking that was going to be the way to go. The thing about sports nutrition is that your body can actually only absorb around about 60 to 70 grams of carbohydrate an hour, glycogen in this case. So taking 6 gels is not going to cut it. What you actually end up doing, of course, is putting your body into a state where you're taking water back into your stomach to try and dilute all of that sugar that's in your body, and it has an adverse effect. So little and often is an often overused phrase, and it's something that's very important in terms of nutrition, not just on the bike nutrition, but also off the bike nutrition. So it's important that you think about what you're taking on board and how much energy you're expending. I talked in the previous slide about the intensity that you might be riding at, and I know there'll be people on this call that have probably got far more experience in terms of sports science knowledge than perhaps I have as a coach. However, there are 2 levels that you ride at, the aerobic and anaerobic level. So anaerobic, of course, is without oxygen, and aerobic is a more steady level to ride at. So if you're riding at a level that's, as I said earlier, comfortably hard, not hardly comfortable, then you will predominantly be burning fat as a fuel, but you'll be burning a bit of carbohydrate as well. As I said a minute ago, 60 to 70 grams an hour would be used. We all start every single day, whether you're Chris Froome or Laura, Kenny, we all start with about 2 to 2.5 hours worth of carbohydrate. It's stored in our liver and our muscles. So that would actually get used up pretty quickly if you rode an intensity level that was anaerobic and that you were actually burning that. And after 2.5 hours, you'd be on empty, and the rest of the ride would be pretty miserable. So that's the reason it's important that you ride at that steady state, be that on the climbs, and that you refuel as little and often and as carefully as you possibly can. 2 water bottles on your bike. We have stops every sort of 35 to 40 miles. So use those bottles, get them refilled. pick up the gels and the sports nutrition for the next stage, and then stop again at the next stop and do the same thing again. Practice eating and drinking on the go sounds like an obvious thing to say, but I have a very strong memory of a rider once on a camp I was organising who had no idea how to drink. A big chap he was. We were going up this big climb. It was very hot. He had a 750 milliliter water bottle. The top wasn't screwed on properly. He had to stop to drink, so he's wasting time. And when he was squirting the bottle, of course, it all just went out all over the front of him, but he had no drink for the rest of the ride. Seems like a really daft thing to use an example, but it's really important that you are able to drink going along, because you'll save a significant amount of time. Similarly with opening bars, if you're taking bars out of your back pocket and you're riding along, if the bar's not open, if you can't take your hands off the bars to actually undo it, that obviously has a safety implication to that. So open the bars before they go into your back pocket. And very importantly, when you get to the end of your ride, you will be presented with a recovery sachet. There's a very important 20-minute window to start the recovery and to start getting the carbohydrate back into your muscles. So it's really important that you start eating as soon as you possibly can when you get back. The other thing about when you're traveling off the bike nutrition is when you're traveling to the event, it's very easy to have trained, to have got yourself into the best shape possible, and then you're traveling down towards Land's End and people are coming from overseas possibly, and suddenly you're forced to change your nutritional strategy completely, and you're eating out of a motorway services or an airport, and you suddenly take on some bad food or some food that's not been cooked properly. If you've got to stay overnight at a hotel, dead easy to just bung a portable kettle in and a bowl of oats, and there you've got a very quick carbohydrate meal before you start your ride the following morning. So it's things like that you need to be aware of. Talked about practicing with high five, talked about the distances between pit stops, making sure also in your off the bike nutrition, we're not monks, we're not professional cyclists, so the odd blowout now and again doesn't harm, but I think it's about, as a general principle, to just make sure that you are aware of what's going into your body. You are what you eat, and it's important not to go too mad. So a little bit of alcohol now and again is always good. Think about the intensity of the ride that you're likely to do. There was always a slide I used to put up of the pros picking up a great big head to either ride the next day or a very hard ride. So consider what it is you're eating in terms of the amount and the quality of the carbs. Okay, next slide, please. This is quite an important one because RAB obviously is a mass participation event. I said earlier, you'll have riders of all different abilities. We did have a rider one year who was riding with tassels on the end of the handlebars. We've had people with no clip-in pedals, and as Tup said, they all seem to make it because they've all prepared properly. People come from backgrounds perhaps of climbing, they've got a big engine, and so therefore it's the technique that they need to practice. And one of the things where you can save yourself a significant amount of energy is when you're riding in a group and you're sheltered behind the riders that are in front. An ideal size group is 6 to 8 riders. What you find on RAB, it's difficult for this to happen on the first couple of days because it is so hilly, but groups start to form. You start to ride with similar people. If you haven't already got into that situation of meeting people before RAB and riding together. But that size group is fairly easy for traffic to overtake. The group becomes a very nice, tight-knit unit. Riders share that pacemaking. So from a safety perspective, things are better. You've got someone to chat to, and you find that you'll get through the ride in a much better state. It's great for us all if we can encourage people to get to riding groups. It doesn't mean you have to, but it just means the camaraderie and the banter is obviously much better. So it's good from that point of view. Okay, next slide, please. Practice. Many of you who've been on these calls before will have heard me say this. There's a famous Italian champion from the 50s who was asked 3 bits of advice he'd give a rider, an up-and-come rider, and it was ride a bike, and ride a bike. And it's, it might sound daft, but it is really important that you make every opportunity you possibly can to get out and ride your bike. As you get towards the summer, and I was in a meeting with British Cycling yesterday, so hot off the press, the limit on the number of riders that can go out is going to go up to 6 from Monday week. So that's good news. And then it's going to go up to, if you're in a BC registered club, it will be actually 15 from that time. As I said, that's a slightly bigger group than I would recommend anyway. But the size of sportive rides is going up to 1,000 from April onwards. Don't quote me on those because I haven't got the piece of paper in front of me, but that's going to be released on Monday. So that's great news for this event. So that also, the reason I've said all that is because it means that there is already organisers starting to advertise their events leading up to the summer. So it's really important that you use some of those events, some of those other sportives to practice getting into the swing of how it is you're going to ride, getting your bikes prepared. I'll leave Richard to talk more about that in a minute, but it's really important that you try and replicate what's actually going to happen. You're going to essentially be riding 900-mile stages every single day. So the chance on some of those bank holiday weekends to try and get, a 3-day riding at least would be really useful. And as it says on that other slide, to ride similar type events. So try and find events that are building up to around about 100 miles, that have got similar type of distance between feed stations, similar types of terrain. Just give you an idea of how you're going to be. So you can practice in those events, the kit you're wearing, your nutritional strategy, and making sure that your bike is up to scratch as well. Okay, next slide, please. So kit, we often get questions about kit. Obviously, we all follow the RAB social media posts. I think, as Tups has said, we've had people riding on sports bikes from, Decathlon stroke Halfords. At the end of the day, the engine is you, the person. So it doesn't matter that it's a £10,000 bike or it's a pretty basic sports model. If you've got the engine, you will succeed, undoubtedly. So that's the first thing about the bike. On the bike, one of the things about clothing, we do still find some riders turn up and they have perhaps not been used to riding cycling equipment, cycling clothing, and the chamois, as it's not a chamois anymore, the insert inside cycling shorts is there for a reason. It's to go next to your skin. You shouldn't be wearing underwear underneath cycling short inserts. And the reason that you don't is because if the seams rub, as John will come on to, our paramedic in a minute will come on to, you'll get some nasty afflictions in the nether regions, which are not always the most pleasant things when you're riding a bike for 9 days, 100 miles each day. So it's very, very important that you look after yourself. You've got at least 3 pairs of shorts, as long as they're comfortable and as long as they're clean. That's a very, very important thing and will make a big difference to how you get through this ride. On your bike itself, a working pump. You'd be surprised how many people actually don't know how to use possibly gas canisters. And again, I'll leave Rich to talk a bit more about that in a minute. Or they've not actually used their mini pump and it's full of water and rusted solid. A couple of tubes, even if you're on tubeless, it's always good to have a couple of tubes because if all else fails, you can pop a tube into a tyre. So a couple of tubes in your little back saddle pack. A multi-tool, ideal if it's got a chain splitter in it. And a couple of chain split links as well, just in case you were to snap a chain. And one of the things that the mechanics are really keen on, because there's such a range of bikes these days, a gear hanger, which is pretty straightforward to get. I'm sure Rich will talk more about this in a minute. And some spokes, particularly to your wheels, is always a good thing to bring as well. And to carry them on your bike rather than back in your bag, which is on the truck, which is going between base camps. So that's an important thing to bear in mind. Rain jacket in your back pocket. I was always taught, whatever the weather, to wear a base layer. It wicks away the perspiration if it's very hot, but it's also there as an extra layer if it's cold. And you're not going to fall off, but if you should fall off, then it gives you an extra layer, which adds a bit of protection because the 2 bits of material rub your cycling shirt and the under jersey. Cycling shirts have got back pockets so that you can put a rain cape in. It is England and Scotland that we're riding through, a tiny bit of Wales. It is September. We have had absolutely gorgeous, stifling hot weather, but equally we've had some pretty dire weather as well. So it's important that you are prepared. Arm warmers, leg warmers, things that you can take in and out your pockets to put on. Glasses, sun cream, all these things are really useful to have in your backpack. Some people choose to use a top bag on the top tube where they can put their jelly babies or whatever else it is they like to eat. And nowadays there's a favour for some small bar bags as well. So there's lots of options. Some of the days we start early in the morning before it's actually got light, and then it's important that you have got working lights on your bike. one thing we see all the time is people put their lights on when they go and get their bike from the rack-in, and then they leave their lights on until they actually start, which by the time they've queued up, can use your batteries for half an hour. So it's silly little things like that that might seem daft, but they're really important. The most important thing about all of this event is to be prepared. And I think that's probably it from me. I think it's over to you now, Mac, on the next slide.
Andy, just a couple of quick ones to add in, which people might be asking about. There's a nutrition guide on the website, which will get sent out, which gives a full breakdown of all the high five stuff. So I'm guessing Pip or one of the guys, we can send a follow up to this, but that breaks down exactly what it is, which is really helpful. And the other one as well is we worked out these kind of milestones through your training, because one of the things is it can feel a massive jump to go right up to doing these 900 mile stints. So again, Pip might be able to say if we've sent this out or not already, but we tended to break down a target each month to try and aim for. So, in February, it was 100 miles ride on flat terrain. In March, 100-mile ride on hilly terrain, kind of within certain times. So I think something I definitely found useful when I was training was not just seeing the end goal as something almost impossible to get to, but just breaking it into month by month, small little targets to aim for. So yeah, we can make sure that goes around afterwards. But I definitely found that helped break down 9 months of training into something more manageable.
Yeah, Taps, just to support that comment there, that milestones guide is integrated into the training plan, which can be found on the rider information platform.
Great, thanks, Pip. Okay, Matt, all yours on the hard lessons learned from Rab.
Well, listen, buckle up. This is the really exciting bit of the presentation. Good morning, everyone. I mean, thanks for giving up your lie-in and joining us. I can't see you, but I can kind of feel you. And it's amazing you're trusting us with this adventure in your life, and well done for getting the training that you're doing done in lockdown. It can't have been easy. Can't wait to meet you in person at the gates of Land's End in September. And rest assured, we're doing everything we can to be really ready to look after you. It's deeply ironic I'm speaking about sort of husbandry and organisation, because if you asked anyone in the house here, they tell you that is not one of my strong suits. That's why I hire wonderfully good people like Andy and Karen and Tups and Richard and John. So it's ironic I'm talking about organisation, but actually it is a really important part of the ride. And as Andy's kind of alluded to, the trick of the ride is to conserve energy. And one of the ways of doing that is being really sensible about your packing and what you bring. So, first big message is there's a 16 kilogram limit, stick to it, because ultimately you're going to be humping that around fields and carrying it. And if it's under 16 kilograms, that's already an energy saving that helps your body the next day. I think the limit's 21 kilograms if you're on the other package, but either way, you don't need to overpack. Just don't make that mistake. I'd also actually encourage you to practice the husbandry around packing and bags. So you spend hours and hours on your bike recording your Strava, but very few people actually spend any time practicing packing and repacking their bags. And I think of a bag as a house, actually, where you've got little rooms in it for the things that you need. I don't know about you, but when I go out cycling, there's always about 36,000 things to remember. And I'm always running backwards and forwards into the house because I've forgotten one of those things. So I would really, get a decent bag. I think Pip's made a recommendation on the platform, and practice allocating sections of it so you can almost find what you need blind, because you will be getting up early in dark tents. And it's a really good drill to practice that. I think, despite my sartorial elegance this morning with my Threshold branded crew kit, which I'm excited to put on to talk to you, this isn't a fashion parade. And so just bring stuff that's comfortable, stuff that you're going to get off from a long, beautiful day on the bike. Tracksuits, warm fleeces, just have one or two of them so you keep that weight down. A beanie, a head torch, some of those things on that slide have been well thought through by the team. So have one of them. We're not trying to impress each other with how we look. Just be comfortable and warm and keep the kit light. I think the last thing I'd say is there's a few little cheeky hacks I've learned over the years of being on the ride. I mean, one of them, for example, is, sleeping with the bike kit that you want for the next day, so that when you get up on a cold morning in Oakhampton, your cycling shorts and top are cozy warm. That's a nice little treat. Also, you know, it won't surprise you that the base camps are not renowned for total silence all night. So I would treat yourself to a really good pair of headphones so you can listen to those meditation chants or listening books or whatever does it for you to get to sleep, and make you have good repose, because back to that conserve the energy point, that will really help you the next day up one of those hills. Little treats like lavender pillows. I know Tups has got a big collection of lavender pillows. It helps him feel serene in the evenings. And I would really encourage you to buy something that's going to be a bit of a treat to look forward to, and spoil yourself with that. That's really it from me. I've tried to keep it as brief as possible. As Tups very sensibly said, no question is stupid on this ride and on this platform and in this community. So, you know, do hit the platform and ask whatever you ask. Do bring your wellies, because we have had some liquid sunshine at times. And I wish you really well with the rest of your training. And I can't wait to see you out there. Ciao.
Great, thanks very much, Mac. Good advice there. We're now on to Rich.
Right, morning folks. I'm here to talk to you about your bike basically and getting it prepped. Andy's obviously led with preparation, and that's pretty much key for RAB on everything. But a lot of people forget their bike. They get all the training in, they ride it to death, and then they turn up with something that is ready for the heap. So get it serviced pre-ride and get at least 1 or 2 small rides in on it, so you know that everything you've had fresh is going to work for you through the 900 miles. We can fix things on the way, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. Another thing, medically speaking, getting the bike fitted to you by a professional fitting service. The most expensive isn't always the best. Someone that's been recommended is brilliant. And getting these, often they're mechanics as well, because they're fitting the parts, selecting the parts, and that's half the battle. Picking the right, the right mechanical parts will definitely aid you on your ride. So getting it fitted pre-ride, but also doing some training on it as well, because if you get it fitted the week before, you're going to be on a brand new bike. You may as well have just bought one off the shelf, brand new, serviced, fitted. So get it fitted before your training, or the bulk of it at least, and get it serviced a ride or 2 before the RAB. Another thing that Andy said, regards the bike, we see there's a lovely, dogma in the picture, easily sort of £10,000 worth of bike with the right wheels. And in some of the other slides, you'll see a £500 Trek. It doesn't matter about the bike. Any bike will do the RAB, as we've seen. We've seen some really cheap stuff, secondhand stuff that people have bought off the plane in London on the way to the RAB, which is incredibly trusting of someone they bought a bike off. But, with a bit of fitting and a bit of servicing, it can be done. We don't recommend it. It's a risk. But any bike will do the RAB, provided you look after it and provided the person is ready. A few things in the second picture, the basics. What are the basics? If you've ridden your bike a lot and you've been in a group, the chat, the banter, the experiences you have on the road are obviously going to come across punctures. Punctures should be your bread and butter. I can fix it within 5 minutes at least. If you've never done one and you've been lucky enough never to have a puncture, if you've done thousands of training miles by September, you should have come across a puncture, unless you're blessed in some way. So practice with the tools you're going to be using on the RAB. Practice in the rain, practice in the cold, practice in the field. Turn a fan on to emulate wind if you're stuck inside. Just practice doing a puncture in any situation. And chains. There's, like in the first 2 days, there are a couple of sharp, stabby climbs, grippy, as Andy would call them, which I'm no doubt you'll hear over the next few months. Fixing a chain is a really easy thing to do yourself, and the right multi-tool, there's one in particular, it's called a Topeak Hexus. There's a few variants of it, but the chain tool on that is sublime, it's brilliant. I've got one in my workshop and in my mobile toolkit because it is that good. It's a 2-minute job, and it even comes with a pin just to hold your chain together. Their latex gloves will stop you getting mucked up, and they can also double up as waterproof layer under or over your riding gloves. So just having a pair of latex gloves in your kit, in your riding kit, will be, it doubles up, stopping you getting greasy and stopping you getting cold if you need it. While you are fixing something in a lay-by, just a point that this photo kind of shows perfectly. It's a bit snobby. You don't put your bike on its bars and your saddle. You can cause it damage. You should be able to do it upright. And if you're riding in a group, ask someone to help you. If you damage one of your shifters, it being upside down, or it falls over, or you rip your seat, you're going to know about it. So try and keep it upright and ask for help. That's what riding on a big ride's all about. Riding with people, camaraderie. They help you, you help them. It's the beginning of the bubble, your first problem, often for some people. Also, there's a white line there for a reason. That marks the edge of the lay-by. That guy could get squashed by a cyclist or a lorry. So keep yourself safe if you're doing your own repairs. Be at the other end of the lay-by so that you can be seen from entering it. And also, if someone else needs to pull in, they're not going to see you tucked behind a bush. The tools we've spoke about, tyre levers are a must for anybody. Even if you've not got the strength to break the bead, if you've got the tyre levers and somebody's broken theirs, they can help you because you bought them, and you can help them if needed. The multi-tool, the Topeak Hexus, just in case you missed it, is brilliant. It comes with 2 little levers, but always have a backup pair. Things you're expected to fix, punctures and chains, these are yourself. Anything else we will definitely be on hand to fix. But you're going to carry tubes, and Andy's already spoke about tubes, and chain links. Even if you're not the most confident or your hands are freezing, if you've got them on you, somebody else can help you, or we can come along and just give you a dig out if you're really struggling. At the end of the day, we understand. We're not going to say it's your tube, you fix it. We'll be there, and if we're close by, we'll help you anyway. 2 of the most important things specific to your bike are mech hangers, and that is the little piece of metal. It's about, I don't know, between 1 inch and 2 inches in length, and that fits on your frame and connects your rear shifter, your rear mech, your gears on the back. They're frame specific. As a mechanical service, we can't carry every mech hanger on the ride. It's impossible. We don't know what's going to turn up. That would be some wizardry indeed. You'd need more of a beard than this. So your mech hanger specific. Get your mechanic, when you get your bike serviced, to source you at least 1 or 2. Some can take a while to come, so get that done early so that you're not waiting for it like 2 or 3 days before the ride. Wheels are the biggest thing to break on a RAB. We can fix a spoke and a wheel in a lay-by. We can't do it if you've not got the spokes specific for your wheels. Wheels, like frames, there are hundreds. We can't carry every spoke. So the spokes, and you can carry them on your bike quite easily. If you get an old length of inner tube, just probably 2 inches longer than your spokes, and 2 bits of electrical tape, put them in the inner tube, and you can shove them in your seat post, or you can tie wrap them or electrical tape them to your chain stays, your seat stays, or your top tube. They're always on your bike. It's not a fashion show. Yes, it might be on your frame, but it's better than being on a lone bike, let me tell you. They're there for emergency purposes, and if we can't fix your bike, that's what you'll be on. We'll carry about 10 to 15 lone bikes in various sizes, and they're there for when something major happens, like you rip your wheel to pieces because your mech hanger's broke. It's gone into the spokes and caused a chain reaction, shall we say. We're not sponsored. So that's on the bike, and when you're riding, and the prep to begin with. When we're out on the road, we would ask you to give us a massive thumbs down. Be obvious with it. Give us a thumbs down. We're obviously going to stop. Anybody would. But we know as mechanics, you've got a problem. It'll say mechanics on the front of the vehicle. We'll have flashing lights on. It'll be quite obvious that we're not just general public. Along with the road crew, which there'll be 3 of us, including myself in a separate vehicle, we're going to have a base team. The base team will be at the beginning of the ride and at the end of every ride. Get to us early, because if we need to fix something, we might need a bit more time than the pit stop, which is probably why you've come to us at the end of the day. We might need to swap saddles over, pedals over, if you've been on a lone bike. You've got that 20-minute window to get your nutrition in. I'd say the next most important thing, provided you're not medically incapable, come and see the mechanics, drop your bike off, and then go and get changed, get showered, get yourself some real food, get yourself sorted. Because we shut, we're having to close our gates at about 9 o'clock in the evening, which sounds late, but if we just left them open, we'd be there till midnight every night. So for our safety and yours, we have to close in an optimal time. And that means getting your bike to us early, as soon as you can, really. Right, every pit stop, we have a team there, which is like a mini base camp. We're looking at a tent with toolboxes. We've got loads of spares. This is the place to come if you've been on a lone bike, or you've got something that you've fixed yourself and you're not sure about. You've maybe had a go at replacing a mech hanger and you just need your gears tuning a little bit, or you've got a buckled wheel. If you can get to the pit stop, get to the pit stop. It's the safest way to do it, and you're not reliant on waiting on a vehicle that might be dealing with something else. The pit stops are fully equipped and they'll be able to sort 90% of your problems. The only time a pit stop won't be able to help is if we've got a particular spare part that is quite, not rare, but specific. It might be back at base. So it might get you onto a lone bike that we'll have a few more of at pit stops, and that'll get you to the end. Timing at a pit stop is everything. If you get in there, you've not got the nutritional urgency that you have at the end of the ride. Drop your bike off first, because it might take us 10 or 15 minutes, by which time you've been to the bathroom, you've got some food, you've had a chat, you've had a sit down, and you're ready to go again. We can have your bike ready and back on the racking if you bring it to us like super early. Otherwise, you might be waiting on a queue at the end of your ride, and then you're in a bit of a pickle, because we don't want you to be in that pit stop any longer than about 15, 20 minutes tops. We've talked about spares on the bike. We are going to carry a massive range of spares. They will be generic. We're not going to carry mech hangers and spokes. We will have the odd spoke, and we will have emergency mech hangers. These are okay in a pickle, but they're not going to treat your drivetrain as the specific one for the frame will be. They're like a get out of jail mech hanger. Very cheap. You can carry them yourself if you're struggling to get the specific one for your frame. What else have we got? Regarding the spares, as many cyclists will know, suppliers are all over the place with what they're doing. We're sourcing parts early, and we're getting the consumables in time. We've got a vast array of chains, cassettes, tires, tubes, even wheels. We'll carry the odd saddle. We don't really want you on a brand new saddle mid-ride, so look after yours. If you have a crash, we can fix it. We've got bars, things like drivetrains, so crank arms, shifters. They're very expensive, so look after them. If you crash, obviously we will do our utmost to replace them, but we're not going to be carrying a complete, brand new Di2 12-speed, top of the range drivetrain, just in case somebody fancies a change mid-ride. We're there to get you to the end mechanically. We're not there to service your bike every day and make it looking showroom every morning. On making your bike look showroom, cleaning services will be provided for you to clean your bike. Plenty of cleaning spray, chain lubrication, rags, buckets of water. If you want any mechanical work doing on your bike, give it a quick clean in the evening and then bring it to us. If you bring a mechanic a really filthy bike and say, here, fix this, we're going to have to go through it and make best judgment, because we're not going to be geared up for cleaning in the tent. So bringing it clean, one, you're going to have a more of a chirpy mechanic, and two, we'll be able to get to the problem quicker, get parts stripped off, get them replaced, and then you're ready, put it on the rack, ready to go in the morning. I've been asked about parts recommendations and what things break the most. I've mentioned it once. Wheels break the most, simply due to their nature. They're doing most of the work, apart from yourselves. Tyres really help a rim. If you're going out on 23C at 110 PSI, your wheels are going to take the brunt of it because you're pretty much riding on a solid strip of rubber. Pick some all-season tyres, something as wide as your frame will allow it, something you're comfortable with. They'll be easier to change a puncture on. They're going to last a bit longer. They're going to be more comfortable, and they're going to give you more grip. Andy was on about descending at speed. If you've got confidence in the rubber that's around your wheel, you can have a bit more confidence going down. The difference in rolling resistance, as I think it's been proven in most magazines, is almost negligible. So pick a tyre that's comfortable and it's going to last you the journey. We do carry tyres, so we can replace them if we need to. Lights, Andy's mentioned, early mornings, late nights. We're going to carry a selection of lights for people that lose them. We'll also carry some batteries so that you can get them swapped and get them working. Rechargeable ones are the best because obviously you can charge them in the charging stations, and you're good morning, noon and night, keep your lights on. Don't just think about early mornings and nights though. There are a lot of shaded areas, particularly in Cornwall. Well, most of the route is picturesque, so expect trees, expect hillsides. You're going to be in the shade a lot. And with a lot of the dark riding gear that people wear, that light on the back is the most important bit of your visage as you're on the road. Because even as event drivers, you're almost invisible sometimes, and we're looking for you. So if you're part of a group and you're the back rider, and a lorry's coming around the corner, if you're lit up like a Belisha beacon, you're going to keep the group safe as well as yourself. We've mentioned fashion from Mac. It's not a fashion parade. Mudguards are not fashionable, but they are very functionable. If you've got a decent set of lightweight mudguards, you can keep at least 50% of the muck off your bike. Your bike's going to run better with less grit, with less water spraying all over it. It's going to keep your kit cleaner, which is going to be better for the days ahead. You know, you might be able to get 2 days out of it as opposed to one, for at least your jackets, something like that. And they're easy to work around. They might be a little inconvenient when you're swapping a wheel out, but the benefits far outweigh the negatives. And they're also a kind thing to have. If you're riding behind someone with bare wheels, you're going to be spraying them. So your groups are more spread out in the rain. If you've got mudguards on, you can get close, make it an easy overtaking opportunity for passing traffic. And the last thing on probably day 3 or 4, we don't like to be changing riding position, but the amount of stems that we take from 6 degrees down to 6 degrees up is phenomenal. It's probably the most changed thing on a bike on any RAB. Taking it from a TT race position to a comfortable, I'm here for a ride, not a race position, is phenomenal. And changing your position on a bike at that stage in the game can be catastrophic. It can be really comfortable, but it can cause other problems. So saddle heights, get those dialed in. Get a bit of tape on there so your saddle only goes in that far. Mark it with a bit of Tipp-Ex, mark it with a marker. You know, you can even score it very lightly just through the light bit of paint, just so it's not going to come off. But preparation is, I think, to summarize, the key. Getting a fit to begin with, a professional fit, and getting a professional service, at least a ride or 2 before you come to the RAB, so it's not worn out, is paramount. There are loads of questions that we've got put to us mechanically. Nothing's a daft question, even if I'd answered it already and there's ambiguity around it. Just ask away. I think there'll be a pretty hefty Q&A session at the end of this, but it's all back to preparation. And I think that's me, so I'll hand back to Nick.
Nice one, Rich. Thanks very much. Thorough as always. I like the way you've now referenced your beard. You are now the mechanical wizard for the duration of the event. Right, should we move on to John to talk all things medical? Hope you've had your breakfast a little while ago, but I'm sure you won't go into too much, just the right level of detail.
Morning, cheers. Firstly, apologies for turning up a little bit late, the invariable rule of night shift is that if you've got something booked after it, your 7 o'clock finish becomes a 9 o'clock finish. So apologies if I'm a bit bleary-eyed. Yes, I'm John. I'm a paramedic. I'm going to be working on the road in the event with the medical team. Really, I just want to reiterate a couple of the bits that Andy and Richard mentioned already. The first one, pacing. What we would really hope is that you are going to take things gently enough so that at the end of the day, you're not completely in the red. I might be misquoting you here, but yeah, something that's pleasantly difficult in terms of pace, but so that you can speak as you're going along and talk to people, whistle, sing, stuff like that. Means you're not going into the red. You're not likely to see us in a state of collapse at the end of your day, which is lovely. Makes our lives much more straightforward. We've had a couple of mentions of kit and saddle sores. From our 2019 MedStats, we saw 1,200 episodes of bum care during the 2019 event. It's not something that we are worried by or embarrassed by. But what we would say is we'd much rather see you early doors in the event when you've got a little red spot or a little bit of discomfort. We'd much rather see that than see you on day 4 or 5 with a horrible open sore somewhere unpleasant. Is that the right level of detail? Good, yeah. I think we can all picture that, can't we? So yeah, we'd much rather see you. Reiterating on what the guys have said as well, it's all about your planning and your preparation, your time on the bike, getting used to wearing the kit, getting a barrier cream or a barrier layer that works for you, whether that's a chamois cream, whether it's something like an aqueous cream. It's very much a personal preference thing. So what works for you, and the best way to find that out is to get out and ride your bike. We can do lots of things, but generally the best treatment for these things is to not ride your bike, which is not an option on day 3 or 4. So we'd much rather prevent them, treat them early, rather than deal with you when you're in a real pickle halfway through the week. And the other thing, and this is probably going to tie in nicely with Rich and the fitting, we will expect to see a lot of aches, pains, stiff joints, things like that. There are kind of 3 ways we can manage those. We can do a bit of medical management. We can do some stuff with bike fitting and bike organisation if we're early enough dealing with that. But the other thing is your kind of self-care that we would look for you guys to do, and we'd hope that that's something that will help you through the training and then into the event, whether that's a stretching routine that works for you, something like a bit of yoga or some cycling specific stretching. And beautifully illustrated there, the use of the foam roller. I don't think I'd get on my TT bike without the foam roller sessions. So I think it's something to get used to. You know, once you've done the nutrition, handed your bike over to the mechanics if it needs something doing, got yourself showered, some stretching every night and every morning is going to make life a lot more comfortable for you. And it's probably not good to be trying to learn how to stretch and how to foam roller at the end of day 1, day 2 when you've got a niggle. It's something we would hope you're coming onto the event going, right, I know these are my problem areas, this is what works for me. And we can guide you, we can have some extra input, but ideally it's a well practiced skill. It's sounding like we've all sort of chatted together about this before, and we're saying ride your bike, practice, get used to doing the things that you're doing, and you'll have a much nicer time. Yeah, we'll help you if it all goes wrong, but ideally we'll have as little input as you need, but we'll make sure that we get you there.
Yeah. Nice one, super helpful. I think just a couple of ones which, again, just kind of chipping in from a less expert experience. I was giving you advice when you come into camp to shower quickly rather than stay in your shorts, which I think is really good advice. Like if you're trying to get as much airflow without going into too much graphic detail, just gives everything a break. So that saddle sores piece, like you say, 1,200 inspections. We've seen people not be able to complete the ride because of this. And whenever people sign up, the dream is to complete that whole distance. And I think whether it's Andy's nutritional advice and training advice, Rich's mechanical advice around mech hangers or John's advice around things like saddle sores, all of these are just trying to remove the small things which can stop you completing that journey you've all signed up for. So yeah, these little things like showering quickly to get into clean, relatively loose fitting clothes when you get into camp all help remove those risks, and they add up, because you don't want that little thing to be the thing that stops you making it there. Okay, I think that's it in terms of slides, unless we've got any more coming on. Okay, so yeah, great. Thanks to all the guys who've run through stuff so far. Shall we open it to the floor, Pip? I don't know if you want to throw some questions in.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have any questions, please just put them in the Zoom chat. I've been collating them as they've been posted during the session. And if you're on Facebook Live, just pop them in the comments underneath the video and they'll get fed through as well. Some questions on training, Andy, that have come through. So there's a training plan that's on our rider platform. There's a beginner, intermediate and advanced one. But a couple of questions. So firstly, if you're able to get out more than the training plan suggests, is that advisable? And secondly, if you live in a relatively flat area with not many hills, how would you advise trying to get some of that hill training in?
So that's two great questions. So the first one, I guess they've got to be pretty generic, as you'll appreciate when you've got 1,000 people. So they are adaptable to suit. I think there's certainly been people that have started perhaps on a novice plan and then realized that that's a bit too easy for them and moved up. So I think you've got to sort of allow a little bit, or we've got to allow a bit of personal responsibility in that area, and you've got to decide whether you think it's too easy or whether you think it's too hard. Both are equally bad, so you need to be stretching yourself, as we talked about in those principles of training. So I think that it's important. One of the other things that's really, really important, and I failed to mention it earlier, and it's just as reminded me, is if you miss any of the sessions because of illness or work commitments or family commitments, do not then try and rush to catch back up where you were, because you'll just get into an overtrained state. So it's really important to follow the programs that suit you. I'm very happy if people have more specific questions on training for you to send that through to Threshold, and then I'll answer them specifically. So if people feel there's more that they need, from a personal point of view, I hope I'm not opening myself up to 1,000 questions there, but I possibly have. But I'm very keen to talk to people about specific issues if that's the case. And then the second aspect of that was, can you just remind me? Sorry.
It was about if you live in a relatively flat area of the country.
Perfect. So that was why I talked about the Dutch example. So one of the things I often prescribe is the intensity of training, and it's very straightforward to. Well, it sounds like it's straightforward, but to go out and warm up, it's always important to do a really good warm up. That might be 15 minutes for some, it might be 30 minutes for another, but if you can manage on average 2 sessions of 20 minutes, which are sort of an intensity that's just get on the edge of being too much. And some people will call that a tempo session. Some people will call it a functional threshold session. I won't get into the specifics of what that means. Some of you will know, I'm sure. But a session of 20 minutes, that's pretty tough. If you did that with a 10-minute break and then did another 20-minute session and then a warm down, and if you could do that twice a week, then that would be you get loads of bang for your buck there. You might not be able to do that immediately. So it might be that you just work up, you warm up, and you just did a 5-minute session at that intensity, and then did a 5-minute break, and then you did another 5-minute session. Then you go up to 10 minutes, a 5-minute break, and 10 minutes. So it's a session that's really used to to increase the strength that you would need for some of that climbing stuff. I think I said earlier that people get very hung up on hills. I think it's more about the psychological aspect of just seeing this big steep ramp in front of you. And I'll go back to what I said earlier about being able to ride at the climb that you can consistently ride up it. You see lots of people set off at the bottom, blow their doors, get a few hundred meters up, and then they have to get off and walk. Much better to start much more slowly. Hare and tortoise comes to mind, as it is with all the training in this instance. So don't get too hung up if you live in a flat area. You can replicate, or on a turbo. You can use these sessions on a turbo if you can't do them out on the road.
Andy, I just want to give a shout out. There's James is actually cycling while listening. And that's wonderful double tasking. So well done, James.
Impressive.
Great, thank you, Andy. Heading to Kaza, just a couple of operational questions. So firstly, at the base camp, is it possible to use a multiple USB charger fed into a single socket? Can our system take that if someone wants to charge multiple devices at the same time? And is contactless available, for example, in the bar?
Fine to bring a multiple USB. We've actually got those as well. So we will have a range of sockets with multiple USBs, to increase the capacity that we have. So if you want to bring your own, that's absolutely fine. Just while we're talking about charging though, please make sure you label literally everything. Label leads, label all your devices. So when everything's on that rack, it can look very similar. So make sure you label everything. Contactless in the bar. That is a bit tricky for all the bars. Some of them are cash only, and some of them are contactless. So it does vary. So it would be advisable if you want to drink at night to have a little bit of cash as well. But I think I'm right in saying, Rich, that you are going to be contactless for payment for parts. Yeah. Does that cover that?
You're on mute still, Rich.
Oh, he did a thumbs up. It is
Sorry,
contactless.
yes,
Yeah.
all contactless with regard to mechanics.
Yeah.
That actually feeds on nicely to a question about, do you charge for your service, Rich? And what elements are then chargeable?
We didn't cover that, did we? No, we don't charge for the service. We just charge for parts. That's it. All servicing is free. Don't use that as an excuse to come and get a free service at the beginning of the ride. It will be heavily frowned upon. You go on the wall of shame. But yeah, free servicing, but just parts.
Thank you. And just sticking with you, just a couple more. Please may you say the name of the multi-tool that you recommended again? A few people are asking that. I think it kept getting missed.
They're going to be sold out. Topeak Hexus, and there is a Hexus 2 and there is a Hexus X or 10. Either are very good, very, very good.
Could
So
you?
Topeak Hexus.
Thank you.
One thing just to add, because in the past, like we're able to get these, we'll have a stock of parts and stuff like that, but what we can't do is kind of price match. So if someone's found a cheaper version of one of the parts available with a 3-month delivery time from another part of the world, we won't match that price. So it's kind of standard pricing, which we've had in the past. So just so people are aware of that.
Yes. Recommended retail price.
Rich, again, just to tie a few questions up nicely.
Okay.
How many spare spokes would you recommend? And do you carry spares for DI2?
We will carry some DI2 spares. We may have, even the batteries come in different shapes and sizes. So we will carry a few batteries, a few linking cables, control modules, but we're not going to carry the full kit, simply due to their supply and cost and the amount that we tend to come across on the ride. It will be a part that we would source en route. So we'll be, heavily in contact with the online suppliers, which we tend to get next day with, and any shop that's en route. I will be diving off and going to, with a large shopping list sometimes, to get specific parts of people. It's normally shifters that we do need to fetch, because they're not generic, so they you know, we need to go and fetch them as and when we need them. Sorry, what was the beginning of that question?
It was
Spokes.
just the number of spare spokes you'd recommend.
Number of spokes. So some bikes will come with a different size spoke on the left side and the right side of the front wheel, and the left side and the right side of the rear wheel. So you'll have 4 different spoke sizes for one bike sometimes. You need to check that out with your local mechanic, your trusted best friend leading up to RAB, hopefully. And you need to, I'd say, if you brought a couple of each, some of them can be really expensive. So you'll have to weigh that up yourself. But you need at least one recommended, a couple of each size of spoke. So it could be up to 8.
Sorry, Pip, just adding in one on that one to your point around cost is, remember, you can send this stuff back. So if you're buying these extras, you don't have to, if you don't use it, keep the receipt, and after 10 days you can put it back and return it. So again, these are things where, you know, you obviously want to keep an eye on the money you're spending on the overall part of the event, but just, yeah, use the refund policies if you don't use stuff, because better to have it, send it back.
Another point on that, Pip, a lot of the parts that we take off are a known warranty issue, such as the shifters. Shimano shifters were going out of fashion. Well, they were getting sold out like they were going out of fashion a few years ago, due to a warranty issue that had been recalled. If we do replace the parts, we're not going to deal with any warranty issues, but we will give you your old parts back to deal with that when you get home. So there will be a cost saving potentially if you can deal with your mechanic and this part, and they can recognise and deal with the actual supplier themselves. So you may have to shell out for shifters to get to the end of RAB, but there may be an option for you to recoup that back once you get home.
Great, thank you. Just a couple questions for John. Regarding foam rollers, is that something that we have with us on the ride? And when it comes to the massages that we offer during the ride, if you've not been kind of going through a massage program during your training, would you advise to flip straight to the massages that we offer?
I think possibly I would suggest, if you're not doing sort of foam rolling and stretching during your training, that's probably something that you definitely do need to include. I think we were having a discussion the other day with regards to what's available with regards to massage and foam rolls. I'm not sure, Karen, if you're able to throw a little bit on that, or?
We will provide foam rollers and yoga mats. So there's plenty of opportunity for you for self-help and an area to do that in. We are monitoring what we're doing with massage right now because of COVID and mitigation measures, and we'll talk more about that sort of nearer the time. But we do have, along with the medical team, a team of sports therapists. So if you are really struggling, they can also help treat you on that front, and they work in conjunction with the medics and get referred from the medics to the sports therapy team. So there's a sort of a raft of options for you on the event, but we strongly recommend that you practice and sort of learn what your stretches are, and we'll just provide the equipment. So you definitely don't need to bring a foam roller or a yoga mat with you.
Kaz, speaking with you then, just a couple of things. How bad are the midges in Scotland? Are there showers at John O'Groats? And lastly, probably an important one, if you can't complete the ride, can you stay with the ride, or do you have to go home?
Okay, so first of all, the midges in the last few years have not been bad, but that's because it's been really windy when we've been on the Scottish legs. I mean, Scotland in September is coming to the end of the midge season. We have had years where it's been quite midgy just in the last couple of camps, and I think on the last day there's one particular pit stop at Altnahara that is always very, very midgy, regardless of but it does depend a bit on the weather. You know, if it's really windy, the midges obviously, you know, they're not a problem, but if it's something that bothers you, it's not a bad idea to bring a midge net just for that day. They're not very expensive. Yes, there will be showers at John O'Groats, definitely, so you can shower before you take your onward transport. In terms of if you can't complete the ride, I'm afraid you can't stay with the ride. If you have to pull out for whatever reason, you are expected to then make your own way home from the event. We can't, unfortunately, put you in broom wagons or anything like that, because obviously we need those resources for people that are still on the ride.
Thank you. Moving to Andy, some more training questions. Firstly, one on cadence. Is a high cadence first and the last 20 minutes of each day necessary or recommended to warm up and down, or is stretching sufficient?
It's a way, the jury's out on this. I mean, my view as a coach would be that you need to ride at the cadence that you're most comfortable with. It became very fashionable when I don't even want to mention his name, but a certain American cyclist who won a big race in France a few times made it very fashionable to pedal at a very high cadence. And then, of course, Mr. Froome did the same thing. It's generally regarded that you're more efficient when you're pedaling faster, and you don't put so much strain onto ligaments, etc. So the general, some of you will ride with cadence monitors. The general perception is anywhere between 70 to 90 is the range. I mean, that's a fairly wide range. So 70 is, if I go out for a ride, I would expect to average around about 78 to 80 revs a minute when I'm riding. So to answer the question, stretching, pre-ride stretch is probably going to get you into right shape to just go out and ride. The thing about this route is that you'll actually be going up and down quite a lot of hills in those first couple of days. That's been alluded to a few times now. So the potential to have gears low enough to be able to maintain that very fast cadence early doors on those stages is pretty remote. And then of course you'll be freewheeling on the descent. So I wouldn't get too hung up on cadence. I think I'd do some pre-event, some pre-stage stretching, get used to that, and again at the end of the day, as we've just alluded to.
Thank you. I'm sticking with training. I'm Swift versus getting outdoors. Is there a recommendation on that blend, both one or the other?
I'm not the right person to ask on that, because I hate indoor cycling with a passion, because for me it's about enjoying the countryside and looking around and just enjoying a bike ride. However, having said that you could do far more structured sessions on an indoor bike, and you will without a doubt make far more progress if you're following a very structured session indoors. And if you're time limited, which many people are with family work commitments, then doing indoor stuff and not having to get all the clobber on to go out in the cold and the wet and the wind and the rain makes sense. So it's what suits you ultimately, but there's massive benefits in doing indoor cycling. I'm just not a massive fan. I prefer to go out and ride my bike and enjoy it, but you'll get something from that, no doubt.
Great. And a really good question as well, for people that are feel that they might be slower riders compared to the rest of the group. How early can people leave in the mornings?
So that's a great question. So what we find, we've got a start window between 7 and 8 most days. There will be times for various reasons, if the weather conditions prevailing at the time dictate, where we might have some earlier starts, and also if there are a couple of other earlier starts where we avoid a bit of traffic. The key thing is that it's about being organised. It's been alluded to in everybody that's spoken so far, and particularly Mac. I think it's really important that if you are one of those people, you take a bit of responsibility. What we sometimes find, of course, and it is a generalisation, but people that are slow can be slow at all sorts of things, and they're slow to get to the line, and then they're at the back of the queue. We've got a team of ride captain stroke chaperones in amongst the route, and they will be riding towards the back, and we'll identify those people pretty quickly. We'll know by the middle of day one who those riders are that are steady. I don't like to use the word slow, the steadier riders. And if we identify them at the start in the morning, on the following day, we will bring them towards the front, on the understanding that people are receptive to that. It's not pushing in, they need that extra time. So we go out of our way to help make that the case. But if you've got yourself prepared, if you've been efficient with getting up in the morning, packing your bag, doing all the things that Tups and Mac have talked about, if you're not faffing around at pit stops, if you're not you're not sort of taking extra time getting medical issues sorted out, then it's about being efficient through the day. You will be looked after, and if you've trained hard, this shouldn't be an issue. We will make sure that that you're given every opportunity to complete this ride.
Great, thank you. But maybe one for yourself or Rich. A couple of questions. Do you have any advice on the kind of mudguards you'd recommend? And are track pumps available? Maybe Rich.
If Rich, I'm happy to do mudguards, and if you go to track pumps, I will often ride what I term my winter bike, primarily because it's an all-round bike and it's got fixed mudguards, which has got mudguard eyes on the frame, so that they can be secured quite permanently, and it's just a very comfortable bike to ride in a group. However, most people won't be that in that position, and they'll be riding what I call a racing bike, which would not have mudguard eyes. So Rich will confirm this, I'm sure. You can buy clip-on mudguards, which have got some sort of elastic bands, rubber bands that you can put around the seat stays to attach them to your bike, and they will do an equally good job. Maybe not quite as long, so for the rider that's riding behind you might not get quite as much protection, but it will keep you much more comfortable, much drier, and as Rich alluded to earlier, it'll make sure that your drivetrain is not getting worn out with grit and stuff. So the clip-on guards are very, very effective if you've got a racing bike. If you've got what I would term a touring bike with mudguard eyes, then personally I'd go for a more fixed mudguard. Rich.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. Mudguard brand, you really need to take your bike to your mechanic, basically, either your mechanic or his workshop, so you can try them out, because one brand might fit this brand of bike, one brand might fit another one really well, seat stay angle, the clearance behind where your tires are. So it's really a case of you may be able to order a few pairs, and then you can send the other ones back that you don't want, because you may want to try them. They're not a one mudguard fits all, unfortunately. Track pumps, on that, we will have a plethora of track pumps at pit stops, in the vans, out on the road, and most importantly, at the beginning of the day. Don't pump your tyres up thinking you're being really quick with it at the end of the day, because overnight, they will inevitably lose about 10% of their pressure. So you'll be thinking you're riding on your desired pressure, and you won't. So pump them up first thing in the morning. And if you're a slower, steadier rider, come and get that done early, and then your bike's sorted. Because worst thing is trying to wrestle your way to the front for a track pump. We will spread them out. We won't allow you to take them back to the tents, but you can take them to your bike in the bike stand if you prefer to do it, as opposed to leaning up against the railings. So yes, track pumps will be available.
Great, thank you. We probably only have time for another 2 or 3 more questions. So I'm really sorry for people that might not get their specific question answered. I'm trying to pick the kind of most common ones coming through. Please feel free to email our inbox afterwards though, and we'll absolutely help you with your specific question. So one maybe for Tups, Kaza, a couple of questions coming through about COVID. Are there any plans to COVID test participants at the start of the ride? What are the contingency plans if somebody becomes unwell during the ride? And lastly, what date would we be calling if the ride is going ahead or not?
I can pick up a few of those, but Kazi, you might jump in. So in terms of, our view is the ride is going ahead. We don't have a fixed date of when we would or wouldn't do that. I think we've got a good lead time before having to make the next round of commitments for working with suppliers. But we don't have a fixed date of go or no go on it. But we are confident that the event can go ahead this year as it stands. The COVID testing on site and things like that, there's a whole load of research around the differences and the value of doing COVID testing on site and things like that, and obviously things like stadiums or closed venues. Lateral flow testing when you go on site has a role to play. I think the nature of the event we run is where we're on an open course effectively from one end of the country to the other, where people will be popping into cafes petrol stations, shops, picking things up as they go. It's not a closed bubble. So the kind of testing on site on arrival is less applicable to this event than it might be to some other sectors which are looking at it in future. And the final part of that question was around how we would deal with isolation and things like that. So we have protocols which we've run for the last 10 years linked to infectious diseases. So the most common being kind of D&V and tummy bugs and things like that. So we've got systems in place which allow us to isolate and get people on and off the ride safely. And we'd be basing it on the same principles of that. So yeah, in the past, if you came onto site, you might see some very solitary looking tents with hazard tape around them, which is never a happy place to be, and is a good reason to be washing your hands. And hand sanitizers have been a feature of threshold events for many years. So we've got proven systems for basically managing infectious diseases. But I don't know, Karen, if you want to add anything to that.
Only that our medical team, as you've seen from John, they are all frontline workers, so are very experienced in the recent events of last year. So we are looking at all the protocols that we need to put in place, and obviously very much governed by government guidelines as to what you have to have on events for isolation purposes and things. So we'll be sticking to whatever measures that have been advised on those fronts.
I think, just a final point, we kind of alluded to it with the fact that we've managed infectious disease for the last 10 years is COVID is obviously a different beast from what people have been used to dealing with, but actually every year we are managing medical risks out on the road, and we see this as a critical element to focus on, but also it's one of multiple things we manage in a normal year in the run up to the event. So everything from extreme weather to road closures to changing legislation to kind of permissions to go through different areas. So behind the scenes every single year we are dealing with a myriad of different kind of risk management processes, and this is another one which we're dealing with this year. So yeah, that's by no means suggesting we're blasé about specific risks of COVID, but equally we're well drilled in the process of managing the unforeseen in similar cases. So yeah, very much focused on the ride going ahead, and as it stands with the vaccine rollout, I think we're in a strong position to be able to do that.
Thank you. I'm just moving on just to collectively try and answer a number of questions coming in about kit. What is the size and volume limit of the bag? I can answer that one. So for the classic packages, classic Scotland and England, the weight limit is 16 kilograms, and we recommend like a 90 litre bag. You can go up to a 120 litre bag, but don't be tempted to fill it as it will go overweight. For the plus package, it's 21 kilograms, and you need to separate that out so that your bag still doesn't go over 16k. So you've got a 16k bag as your max, and then 5k bag as a second bag. You can purchase additional weight if you like. More information about that is on the rider information platform, which hopefully you'll have access to. If not, please just ping us an email. We'll send you the information regarding that. On kits, Kaz, probably just a couple quick ones for you. Would you what recommended sleeping bag, temperature sleeping bag would you recommend? So I'm not saying that very well. What the degrees of yeah.
I got it. I would go for what we used to call at least a 3 season. We have had minus temperatures in Scotland in the past. We've had a -2 night, -3 night, very chilly. So the better quality sleeping bag you can bring, the more comfortable you'll be. Camping in England in September, it's never going to be, it's not the tropics, it's always going to be a little bit chilly at night, even if you've had a beautiful day of sunshine, it's always going to be a little bit cold and damp. And if you're cold at night, you will not sleep well. So you need to think about your sleeping bag, get the best you possibly can. Whether you go down or synthetic, that's entirely up to you. Some people prefer one version over the other. That doesn't matter, but you really need to make sure that it goes down to at least those temperatures. So -2, -3.
Great, thank you. Just final one to wrap up it before I just go on to our final question. Could you please explain how laundry works, how many items get put through, and is it too late to purchase laundry?
It's not, as far as I know, Pip, it's not too late, is it? We've still got room on laundry?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's definitely not too late to purchase laundry. We have the laundry 3 times a week. So you need 3 sets of kit to bring with you. And then in Bath, Haydock and Edinburgh, we do the laundry and wash your kit. So it works in the way that you bring it to us in the evening of the day that we've got the laundry, and you pick it up again the following morning. So you can only put those cycling gear in the laundry bags. The whole system will be explained when you're actually on the ride, because it's easier to show you how it all works and fits together. But all you need to really know is it's just for cycling gear. So you need your 3 sets of cycling gear to wear in the camps that we don't have the laundry. So it's 3 times a week.
Great, thank you. And finally, maybe one for Tups or Andy, are we planning to run any training rides at all between now and the event?
I think as it stands, we don't have them in forecast. They're not planned because of the basically potential restrictions throughout the course of the summer. However, as Andy alluded to, there's a lot of other events beginning to bubble up, and that kind of inside scoop on the British cycling restrictions is great. So we should be able to see some ones bubbling up, and finding ones in your local area I think is going to make sense because, you know, especially kind of through to April and early May, I imagine there's still some uncertainty about events. So if you can keep local, it probably reduces costs and things like that. So at the moment, we're not planning on doing a threshold based one. Usually we'd have London Revolution, but that shifted back to September after RAB. But yeah, I think if there's demand, we could definitely look at doing another one of these webinars later on. And if people are interested, the forum would be a good place to start sharing sportees if people know good ones in their area or want to gather together to find a group. So yeah, hopefully that answers that one.
Great. Thank you. I'm afraid that's all we have time for question-wise, but as I said, if we haven't answered your question, I'm really sorry, but please do email the info@rideacrossbritain.com inbox, and we'll be very happy to help and pass your questions on to the rest of the team if they're more technical. I will hand over to Tups to sign off.
Great, thanks Pip, and also all the guys who are behind the scenes setting up all the tech, giving up their Saturday, much appreciated. So yeah, I mean, great to, again, we don't have the chance to see you in person, but yeah, to get those questions coming in. Hopefully it has reassured you rather than alarmed you about the things which are in prospect. You know, there's some common themes running all the way through, kind of getting on your bike, practice, getting comfortable with it. You know, we've seen people with no experience and no background in, you know, physical events absolutely nail this ride with the right preparation. So you should all have confidence, you know, in line with the threshold mantra of more is in you. I fully believe everyone on this call, you've got the ability to do it. Hopefully the advice we're giving is helping you on that journey, but we are here, you know, every single day to help you along that journey. So please do pick up the phone, let us know, kind of work closely with each other, chat to each other on the forums, get out and ride together or on Zwift, whatever suits you. And we will count down the days till we see you in Land's End. Can't wait. Nice one. Thanks everyone. Enjoy your training. Take care.